Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped and welcome to the 2023 Goodwood Festival of Speed. Now, I love a Caterham, and for all of you, I'm sure, when you think Caterham, you think about one of these, a 7, the most iconic car design out there, I think. They've been like this for a very long time. But a couple of weeks ago, Caterham started teasing the internet with pictures of something that they call the Project V. Their new car that will go into production in a few years' time, an all-electric car penned by their new chief designer, a guy called Anthony Jannarelli. And I've been invited here today by Caterham to interview Anthony Jannarelli and talk through the Project V. So let's head on inside out of the rain and go and explore a Caterham that looks very, very different to this one. Now then guys, welcome to the Caterham stand here at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. The gentleman beside me I've wanted to meet for a good 2 or 3 years. This is Anthony Jannarelli. It's a pleasure to meet you, my friend.
Pleasure is mine.
Welcome to the channel. Now, we're here to talk about Caterham, but I can't not very briefly talk about your background, because if you follow the channel, a few years ago I drove the Jannarelli Design 1, and if you haven't seen that video, I'm going to put a link up above right now. Head over and go and watch it. But for me, that car was the essence of beautiful design, that kind of 60s, 70s curvy car. And then I got some teaser shots from Caterham on my socials a few weeks ago now, and I'm reading them, and it had your name on there, and I'm like, I had no idea that you'd come over to Caterham. So tell me the story very briefly. How are you here? Because you're now the head of design for...
Yeah, the chief designer of Caterham.
Wow.
And it's, no, I mean, first it's a great honor to be able to design a new car for Caterham, because I mean, it was also a great pressure and challenge, because we all know that they had only the 7 and they needed to do something new, and it's down on me to be able to bring this to the next era.
Yeah.
But what happened basically is that it's like this very nice and cool story in some sort. Bob Lashley, the CEO today of Caterham, was the chief strategy officer of Caterham at the time. And he used to be in Dubai for a little while. And obviously in Dubai I have my own Caterham 7. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, you would like to meet someone from Caterham?" I said, "Yeah, I would love to."
Yeah.
And with Bob, bit by bit, we started to talk of course, what we were doing each other. And he saw the Design 1. He understood that I will apply a lot of the philosophy from Caterham into the Design 1. And my point with the Design 1 was like to have this driving precision of the Caterham, but with a glamorous shape in some sort. It's a bit like maybe a next step for what the Caterham could be. And what happened is that when he had this project in mind with VT Holdings and Takahashi-san, I mean, they decided to ask a few designers to, as a competition, to do a proposal, and I was the one to be chosen, basically.
Yeah. Wow. So talk to us about the car, because this is the most un-Caterham looking Caterham I've ever seen. The 7's such an iconic shape. I'm an ex-Caterham 7 owner. I love them. They're amazing, visceral cars to drive. But from a design point of view, they are quite, they're that shape. I don't think you're going to beat that. So how did you get from that to this beautiful, curvy, elegant?
Because the point, when you design something, there's a bit of a difference between just styling and designing. Designing, you need to understand the concept. So the idea is like, what's the concept of the 7? It's really this back to basic sports car, and everything has a function. Form follows function. So everything when you see the 7, you understand the purpose of the car. So for me, I wanted the same principle. Like when you see this car, you understand its purpose. So the purpose is to be a small, elegant GT car, and the fact that it's electric, it's a car that you could use almost as a daily drive.
Yeah.
So it has to be elegant and soft to your eyes, it has to be seducing without being aggressive. So the principle was, okay, if today Caterham, they do this small GT, how do you apply this philosophy of simplicity, lightness and fun? So this simplicity is simplicity of the design, and basically Caterham has no styling DNA in some sort, you know, so there's no heritage. So we have to create this. So I created this coming from this philosophy I just explained. And the principle is like, we need to show the function. So you see the bottom of the car, it's black, but it shows the aerodynamics of the car, because this car is electric, it has to flow through the air. So you see all the components that will participate into the aero performance. And then in the middle of the car, basically, you see all these very sharp and surface and very geometrical surfaces. And in some sort, is to show that this car is modern. We show some kind of precision and control into the design, but it's also reflects back to the Caterham style, to the 7 style, which has these aluminum panels that has these folded angles, you know. And so I applied this all around the car. So the first layer technical, second layer is like control, and the third layer, which is the top of the car, that's where you get this vintage silhouette, and it's more my style also. And basically it's all organic and soft. And if you look at the car, everything is very logical. One of my thing was, imagine ask a kid to draw a sports car. You have the 2 wheels, then a nice curve above each wheels that we create the wheel arch, and then a nice curve above the passenger and driver. So you have this car can be defined in 3 curves. And if you think about it, if you check the details of the surface.
Let's walk around. Let's walk us around. Stunning.
There's no feature, you know. It's the most simplest shape you can do.
Bodywork. What's the bodywork made out of? Is it aluminium or?
So this is the concept. So it's a mix of composite and resin and carbon fiber. But the production car would be again composite, carbon fiber, just to be as light as possible.
I love the details here. Really
and
cool.
You see, because if you just look at this car, you think, oh, what's this? It's very modern and technical. And actually, you know, that's why I say first layer, it's a function. Then this is a modern era, and top of the car, it's a vintage era, you know.
And where do you start? Do you kind of sketch the top layer and the beauty first, and then work your way down, or?
Basically, because we know, you know, I know it was an electric car. So at the beginning, you don't know exactly the thickness of the battery. So the fact that to use a dark area underneath is that, okay, even if the platform is a bit thick, you know, the car will still look a bit elongated. So this first layer, you know, it was chosen because of this electric package. And then you need to bring something new to the market, you know. And I mean, I like the vintage style, but I always want to bring something new. And I say, okay, how can you define Caterham and how can it be different from the other car? It's really all this area, you know, it's all this sharp angles. And it helps me to structure the car. If you see, it's all about making the car look as thin as possible, you know, as elongated. And we knew also that we will not make a very long car, because Caterham, you know, stands for lightness and agility. So you know you want a small package. But at the same time, for me the principle is that when you have a car, you want to be proud of driving it, you know. And it can be useful when you go in town, you go to a nice hotel, etc. So you want to feel a bit like a James Bond guy, you know. And the idea is always to find the perfect balance into the proportion. And my point was to make the car slightly longer, for instance, than an Alpine A110. So we are 5 centimeters longer, but it just allows us to make the car have a better stance in some sort, and it's almost like this baby supercar. And so that's how basically I worked out the volume, you know.
Was it always going to be a 2+2?
So yeah, that was part of the brief at the beginning, and actually it's very clever because thanks to the fact that it's electric, you don't have a cumbersome, let's say, engine to position somewhere. And I think the best challenge was to say, okay, if it's electric, we know that as a petrol head, we prefer like having the sound, the excitement of the noise, etc. But I say, okay, what would be the advantage of having an electric package? The advantage is that you still have a small footprint compared to the interior, the size of the cabin. And I think for me it's super important because suddenly you get this car that can be almost a daily drive. So the back seat, for instance, it's for your kid, it's for a third person, so for a short time.
Yeah.
And some people say even for their dog, actually.
Oh, I've got 2 dogs,
Yeah.
they'll be in the back.
Exactly. So if you have only a 2-seater, the usability is very narrow in some sort. And basically, you can have the small space at the small envelope outside, and the usability of a much longer car if it was an ICE car,
Is it a skateboard? So is it batteries on the floor and
Yeah.
a motor at the back?
Exactly. All the most simple architecture. So the only thing is that we wanted to, if I show you the interior, for instance, we wanted to have a proper, let's say, sport position. So the seats are as low as possible. So there's no battery under the seat. There's only battery under the
Feet are a little bit.
Yeah, you see it's a bit higher, and also the battery will be located underneath. Actually, Porsche with the Taycan, that's what they do. It's the same principle. And you have a single motor at the back, and that's it. So you also have a huge luggage compartment.
The dials, that is very Caterham. I know the way you've got the round dials, is that an on-purpose design kind of fling back to the Caterham?
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about the brief, they wanted to have this vintage feel a bit everywhere in the car, and part of the inspiration, it's also the Lotus Elan. Everybody loves this car, and Takahashi-san from VT Holdings, the chairman, he loves the Lotus Elan, the very first generations, and I think they wanted to have they wanted this feel, and so. When you want to know which direction to take, I look back at the past and I say, okay, let's blend, what was good in the past and what we use today, like a digital screen. So that was all part of this brief,
Yeah, that's a stunning interior, really beautiful.
And the interior, for instance, if you again look at the volume, everything is quite simple.
It's big in there.
It's a very simple shape, but it feels big, and you have space inside because the dashboard is very light, and we use the minimum features possible. So you have an Apple CarPlay system, so you will only use your phone for the infotainment, and that's it. You have AC and finish.
I've been saying for a long time, modern day cars, why do you spend all the money building your own infotainment system when people just go straight to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto?
But ask Bob Lechley, the CEO. He'll have a long explanation about this because he comes from OEM, from Nissan, and it's always about this decision process that is complicated. But because Caterham is still a small company, they can take bold decisions, saying like, okay, we will use Apple CarPlay and that's it, no discussion.
Let's wander around the front and have a look. It's got such a classic line, in terms of, I can see so much of your, it's interesting when you said they had no design language, or what design language they had was a historic.
Inherited from Lotus, so we need to split apart, So, at the front, actually, there's a even clearer relationship with the 7. The front mouse, let's say, it's mimicking the shape of the 7. So, in terms of concept, basically, like I started with the center of the car. So you have the volume. The idea is like, how do you cover a chassis? So you have the center you have this centerpiece. It gives you the overall shape, the central cabin. And then you have to cover the wheel. So again, what's the simplest shape to cover a wheel? It's really to create this very fluid and clean surface. And I wanted to use the minimum material possible. So here, you can guess, the Caterham, the 7, And then you start to cover just in front of the wheel. And this blade, it's only to guide the air around the tire, So it's very minimalistic. And one little thing also is like, I'm quite proud of this part because it could become a strong styling cue for Caterham. And it serves a purpose also for the manufacturing because these cars, they will be manufactured by hand. And for instance, with this type of solution, you care less about the gap, Imagine this is a few millimeters off, no issue,
So, but it's like an inch, it's fine.
So it's also something, when you design a car, you have to think of the shed lines to be clean, etc. And I'm pleased because it will help Caterham from maybe sometimes the perception of being a kit car manufacturer up to be a proper, almost OEM. And I think with Bob as a CEO coming from the Nissan, that's the intention, to be in between two worlds and to really get the best of both. So that's why you want in the design. I intend to do the thing.
That's beautiful. Just a quick chat about powertrain. So, how big's the battery pack? What's the output of the motor? Is that?
It's 200 kilowatts, so it's 270 horsepower.
Okay.
And the weight it's under 1200 kilo.
So, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So these are target performances, but they are they are really realistic because first, we worked with engineers to make sure we are not saying stupid things, and the fact is like to be able to achieve this is not really because Caterham is more clever than another car manufacturer. It comes back to the philosophy of making things simple and minimalistic.
Yeah.
So I call this, it's what they apply at Apple, for instance, this process of elimination. The less part we use, the less complicated and the lighter it is.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the simplicity of the interior. If you look at the front hood, it's just one big piece.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And the idea is that all the electronic components, they will be housed here. So we will only open this for the servicing. And basically, we not make it openable.
There's no front storage for luggage?
No.
Is that just in the rear?
Rear and behind. So it's more than enough. It allows the engineer to create like the wishbone they want, the shape of the suspension.
Yeah.
And the fact that you only have one piece, you don't have to create an hinge. You don't have to have this small compartment with these extra panels, etc. And again, if you apply this philosophy throughout all the car, you manage to make something much lighter. And also, obviously, the car it's conceptual because today the battery technology we wouldn't fit into such a package. So the idea is really to use the next generation of battery. That's why the car is aimed at 2026 and not earlier.
Yeah. Wow, it's just fascinating to talk through with you just your approach. You often come and you see a car like this and it's the finished product, but it's to speak to the guy who had it originally on a piece of paper and started to sketch it. It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time.
No, it's a pleasure.
It's just been I could spend all day talking cars with you. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed that. It's a real honour to get this chap on the channel and talk about the new Project V. Stay tuned online. I'm sure there'll be more and more stuff coming from Caterham on this car, and 2026 isn't a must. It's not that long away.
No, everything goes fast.
You got plenty of time.
Yeah. And just the thing to clarify is that the car you see today is really the shape you will get in the production car.
Yeah. So this isn't going to be one of those concepts that.
No. We did what we call a pre-feasibility study, and so like the windshield is manufacturable, the lights are in the right position.
Yeah.
So. And this was thanks to the cooperation with Ital Design. Ital Design, it's a big group now, and they have such a knowledge that they are able to guide us through all this process of making sure the car it's very close to the production. And something that we show, we're not telling you, but
that is when you see like a concept car and then it ends up being nothing like the Alpine, the 3-seat Alpine. I went to Alpine this morning and said, make it like that.
For us,
like it's going to be like that.
Yeah. And it's part of my ethos as well, just to make sure that everything is not a lie, because after you get stuck, and I don't want people to be disappointed.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Yeah, cheers, man.
Cheers.
Guys, hope you enjoyed that. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol Ped for plenty more content to come. A massive thank you to all the guys at Caterham for reaching out and saying, would you like to come and spend some time with Anthony talking about the Project V? And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm there. Just name the time. Anyway, I'll see you on the next film, guys. You take care. Drive safe.